Yes, Business Live Global. Hello. It is I, Johnny Boy, the Consumer Monkey McDonald, here with yet another interview with a business person, a mover, a shaker, a charity, a paradigm shifter. Who knows who will be on? It's always going to be interesting and it's always going to be varied. And if you think you've got some added value for the Business Live community, which is now, it's occurring in 5 countries live, and we are internationally through our online events. Join us today and put yourself forward for an interview where you get to choose the questions I ask, and not only that, but you get to choose a favourite song of yours as well. So it's all win-win, win-win, win-win. So let's see who we've got in the room for today. Enabling Sustainable Futures, I give you Becky Toal. Becky, good morning.
Good morning, Jonathan. Thanks very much for having me today. Appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Now, tell people a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thanks, Jonathan. So, my name's Becky Toal, owner, founder of Growbury Consulting Limited, and I set up my business Enabling Sustainable Futures back in 2006. Wow. After working in industry for about 5 years, and I have 3 environmental degrees.
Wow.
I'm a chartered environmentalist, and I'm a full member of an institute called the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment, Jonathan.
Okay. Very, very, very qualified. I met you at the International Women in STEM and Construction.
Yes.
What else have you been awarded?
Oh, thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, I was very humbled this year, actually, to be one of 30 women in the UK to be honoured at the House of Lords in June with the International Inspirational Women in STEM and Construction rather than So this is a campaign which is backed by NatWest to inspire more women to move into STEM careers, science, technology, engineering, maths and construction, but to also stay in STEM and construction, because if we do that, if we encourage more women to move into the sector, but also stay in the sector, it could potentially add, you're talking billions, to the UK economy, which would help us get out of pickles like, recessions and things like that, and also be more diverse and inclusive for the sector. So I was very humbled to win that. And actually, it's not just here's a gong, go away. I now get to coach and mentor a young STEM ambassador who's got a career in environmental management, who's very early days in her career. So I'm going to be there for the next year. If she has any questions, I can sort of answer those questions or give us some guidance. But this year I've also been, again, very humbled to win END's top 100 environmental professional in the UK.
Wow.
So that's really like, wow, with people like Fergal Sharkey and Chris Packham, who you've probably seen on the telly. And that kind of came out of last year. I got I was the only one who won the Environmental Professional of the Year with Society for the Environment. And the Society for the Environment is an umbrella organisation which represents a lot of technical institutes, including my institute, the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment. So there's only one of those awards each year. So it's been sort of like a long time coming, because I've worked in the industry obviously since the year 2000-ish. So 23 years now, Jonathan, still going strong, still very passionate about what I do, but it's very humbling, and it's nice to be able to give back as well to a young person who's just getting going in their career.
Absolutely, and mentoring is so important, as is representation, to get more girls and people from all marginalised communities. So how can an organisation, whether they're private or public sector, manage their environmental impact? So we hear a lot about net zero, and net zero doesn't mean we're stopping and producing carbon. It means we're doing something to offset it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the world I live in, Jonathan, is all around standards. So there's international standards, which are called ISOs, International Standards Organization, but there's also PASs, PAS, which stands for Publicly Acceptable Specifications. So these are tools and frameworks which any organization. There could be a one-person band right up to 250 or above 250 people. There could be a public sector like a council, or there could be a private sector organization, or there could be a co-op even, where I used to work. And they can embrace these tools, these standards, and it gives you a very logical step-by-step, like baking a cake. It's like a recipe to manage your environmental impacts and aspects, of which greenhouse gases, everybody's generating greenhouse gases, but everyone's generating waste. Even at home, we have aluminium cans, plastic bottles, cardboard waste. So it's taking the opportunity to use a standard to manage those impacts. And as you mentioned, climate change is a massive risk to everybody's supply chain, but it can also be, in a weird way, opportunities as well, to pivot, to maybe change your ingredient mix if you are making cakes, literally, and also to support your supply chain. So at the minute, there's a huge focus, Jonathan, on trying to get to net zero. And one of the steps in that journey that you can do is PAS 2060, which is the carbon neutrality standard. So getting to carbon neutral is a step towards net zero. It's not, as you say, the ultimate answer, but net zero, we're all going to have to decarbonize, which means produce like zero greenhouse gases to the environment, right? And there's different ways we can do that. And I think even, smaller companies can recycle their coffee pods. They can, shred the paper and reuse it, for gerbil bedding or horse bedding. There's lots of things we can do. I mean, people have been recycling aluminium cans for a long time, glass bottles, things like that. And also to think about, is there anything you could ask your suppliers to take back? So I'll give you an example. I was on a site tour recently, walked around this massive factory, got to where the bins were, and there were some mushroom trays in the bin. And I thought to myself, well, that's a hard plastic, really, really dense plastic tray. Can the supplier, the catering company, just ask for the mushroom person to take that back, and then they could wash it, obviously sanitize it, and then refill it with mushrooms and then drop those mushrooms back again. So that's thinking about circularity instead of using it once and then binning it. Actually think a little bit about, well, if I contact that supplier, that would save them money because they're not then having to remake those trays. It would reduce the energy bill, the carbon footprint, but also it would just go round and round and round in a great big sort of figure of 8 feedback loop. So it's just getting people really to use these standards to think differently about their environmental impact, and to do things in a more sort of strategic way that supports the environment. So things like what we're having now, a chat through virtual means, if we can encourage, obviously post-COVID, everyone knows what Zoom is, everyone's heard of Teams, and it's encouraging people to continue to use these digital tools, so that you're not traveling, so you're not contributing to the carbon footprint. And that's called scope 4 in the greenhouse gas protocol language, scope 4, an avoided emission. How can we avoid pumping things into the atmosphere, which benefits all of us, better quality of life, we're less stressed, I'm not having to spend so much time on the M6, things like that. So the standards that we're talking about, Jonathan, are also independently assessed. So that means, if your organization were to come forward for the carbon neutrality standard, you can have an independent audit of your data, of your process, and everything you've done to reduce your carbon footprint to a specification like PAS 2060. And that's really good because that gives you credibility, that you've got an independent person or an independent body who's got nothing to do with you saying, yes, actually, Jonathan, your organization has achieved these requirements, and therefore you're worthy of this, certification. And sustainability standards are really growing at the minute, which is a great career opportunity if there's any young people, listening to this conversation today and are thinking about getting into a career in environmental management or sustainability management. It's a phenomenal growth that we're experiencing, from client inquiries, but we need to do it, Jonathan, because we've got to try and stick to that 1.5 degrees, which was agreed in the Paris Agreement. to stop, the ice caps from completely melting. And I always say the polar bear's knocking on your door, which we definitely don't want. We definitely don't want that. We
Definitely don't
want
want
them
that.
to, yeah, we want them to stay where their home is, and we stay in our home. So this is a really, a credible point, really, because why would people trust your organization if you don't have these standards and certifications? And investors, I'll just quickly touch on that. A lot of investors, they don't want to put their money into fossil fuel extracting businesses anymore. They want to invest in sustainably ran and sustainably managed businesses, and that's great because they're looking for the ISOs, they're looking for the CASs.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, as you were describing it from a technical standpoint, what we didn't cover is that it is a competitive advantage, and that more and more consumers are looking for ethical, sustainable businesses in all their purchases. So we're coming to the end of our time. Thank you very much. Businesses out there in Business Life Global, or students, as Becky said, that need to get into the industry, all her notes will be with the YouTube and with the radio show. You've chosen Foo Fighters, Becky. What song is this?
I think it's the best of you.
The Best of You.
Best of You, which I've seen the Foo Fighters live a few times, and Dave Grohl's just amazing, isn't he? But the whole band, I know they've had their tragedies, but every day you've got to show up and give the best that you can, in whatever professional capacity you're in there, Jonathan. But I've been supporting companies to reduce the carbon footprint for over 20 years, and I feel I have given the best of me.
I bet you have.
to those organizations. But I just want to encourage more people, into the sector. So I hope the song is motivational and inspirational as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Love your passion, Becky. Thank you very much.
Thank you.